The views expressed by our guests are their own and do not reflect the official stance of their employer or any affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Counsel Houde Podcast. I'm your co-host, Daniel Abramoff, and today we have another great guest, capital markets legal over at crypto.com, Joaquin Gubb. Today, Joaquin talked about the different regulatory and litigation matters that occur in the cryptoverse, along with bridging the gap between business and legal within his organization, the different challenges and rewards that go along with that, and Joaquin's take on where crypto's going. I hope you enjoy. Joaquin, thank you so much for joining us.
Daniel, really a big pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
You are the VP of Capital Markets at Crypto.com. What does that mean, and what does your role entail?
Crypto.com is a large global organization. We have over 100 million customers globally. A large amount of that presence is here in the U.S. As a VP of Capital Markets, I work closely with our derivatives exchange in Chicago. We also recently announced that we purchased a U.S. broker-dealer, so it's SEC-regulated, FINRA-registered broker-dealer. A lot of my job is supporting the legal aspects of that role. And what I mean by that is we roll out new products on our derivatives platform. We look to be registered and licensed in all jurisdictions to provide the services, the financial services to support our global goal, which is to have cryptocurrency in every wallet, but also to be a financial innovation company and offer financial services globally.
So when dealing with all these different areas of the world, and obviously there are legal aspects that come along with every piece of it, it must be quite a lot to have to sort of answer to, especially when dealing with government regulatory laws that come out to have you all sort of make sure you're complying. When it comes to another aspect of things, privatizing cryptocurrency in order to take burdens off of the government. Do you have any use cases there where that's currently happening?
Yeah, sure. So two use cases I would definitely point you towards. Um, I was at the DC FinTech conference now a year ago, and it's a wonderful conference put on by Chris Broomer from Georgetown Law. And he had guests there from the U.S. Special Warfare Group. I believe it was a um, major who was referencing that she was in the procurement business for the U.S. Special Forces. And in her words, they use cryptocurrency now globally as a means of getting men and materiel for the special operations globally on a very short-term basis. So currently, our U.S. military services, I don't think she indicated that all of the, for instance, the U.S. Army uses it on a daily basis, but for certainly our special warfare um, uh, soldiers are using cryptocurrency to pay for men and material and operations globally.
And that would help speed things up, I assume, compared to previously when they probably would have to go through a lot of different types of offices to get things pushed through.
Yeah, certainly. I think there are many examples from even just 25 years ago when we went into Afghanistan. The first people there were special warfare and CIA individuals. And I think the press is replete with stories where they would have to take bags of cash with them. And it took a significant amount of time to get that money out of a bank, fly it over there, and deposit the financial resources that you need to buy, weapons or whatever to support the roles that they needed to do there. Now we can do that in about 20 seconds.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that is a financial innovation that our U.S. military is using. And even according to what she was saying, it's how our allies want to get paid because, they can get the funds instantaneously rather than waiting and also losing some of the assets in the TradFi world for the conversion of those assets, whether it be US dollars into local currency or what have you. So there's definitely an advantage for the US military um, for speeding up the process it takes to get the money where it needs to be.
And ultimately, you're allowing them to focus on bigger fish to fry and not have to deal with these types of processes that they would just probably have to hire more people to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, with any logistics operation, the more complicated the logistics are, the more complex the structure has to be to support those logistics, right? If it's just a matter of, using computer code to transmit money, it certainly seems like a better, privatized way of assisting the functions of the U.S. government and the U.S. military.
Shifting topics here a little bit, we talked about initially the challenges of working in an industry where, especially your position, where you're hearing so many different things on the regulatory side and dealing with it. But obviously, you have internally different teams that you work with, and the challenges of sort of navigating around those areas. Um, so. How do you handle those types of projects that are probably more confidential without sharing too much detail?
It's a really good question because we are a smaller organization in terms of our U.S. presence, but we are a large global organization in terms of our financial presence. And that means that we have many different business groups, many different ongoing projects, and we support all of those projects, certainly from a regional perspective. The important thing there to note is, again, Crypto.com wants to be licensed. They want to be registered. They want to work with the regulators and do the business. We have over 40 MTL licenses here in the United States. So that's state regulated money transfer licenses. We have a fully regulated derivatives platform, which is regulated by both the CFTC and then, has various financial reporting obligations and the like. We now have a broker dealer, as we announced. These are all heavily regulated industries. If you're in the financial industry and you're in securities, derivatives, and banking, you're in a very regulated space. We want to do that. But across all of those different regulators, especially with some of the lack of clarity that there's been in digital assets, it gets to be a little complicated because you may be working with your CFTC partners on one issue. Obviously, it was announced earlier this year that we were under review by the SEC. That information you have to keep very confidential and can't be shared. So, you might go to a meeting even or a conference of lawyers and stuff. And I've even been asked by people, oh, when are you guys making your announcement? Probably just an off the cuff, friendly remark, but you have to put your lawyer hat on and be like, I can't answer that question.
Right. You and in 5 to 10 years,
Yeah,
I don't know.
we'll have some good stories 5 or 10 years, but right now, I have to, keep my cards very close to the vest and not reveal that information. Um, and many other sort of similar things. There may be business lines that don't have, should not have access to that. Obviously, the top people of the organization are always aware of what's going on, but in any organization, you're working with all these different people across different platforms and different services. And, whether it's a matter of just sort of friendly conversation or people maybe being nervous because they saw some of the pressures. It certainly was a question that was asked more frequently than I expected of people of one of the corporate lawyers. They might think that people would be like, oh, well, that's clearly something that would be covered by attorney-client privilege. So why bother even asking? But I was so curious. Get so curious. So you have to navigate that. You have to come up with ways of making sure that you keep your cards close to the vest.
Exactly. And obviously dealing with tons of different litigation around all these areas. So what is your perspective on the crypto litigation landscape and what are some of the trends that you are seeing?
Yeah, so I think it's fundamentally changed in 2024, most recently because of the election. And I think those are still sort of known unknowns, if you will, because we just don't know what the downstream effect is going to be yet. Obviously, the new administration is not in place. The old one is still there, and we're working through that system still. But I do think the courts have really helped clear the playing field for us this year. I think they really have come down with some strong rulings. The first actually was last year with the Ripple, where the secondary sales are not considered to be investment contracts. They're not considered to be a type of security. So when you look at the portfolio of what the Exchange Act and the Securities Act label as securities and what have to be traded on exchange markets. So that's the 33 Act and the 34 Act. An investment contract is just one type of security. Um, And there are a lot of questions as to what that means, even out of Howdy. So, in the Howdy case, um, things that were investment contracts and deemed to be a security went for 10 years. That's what the promises and the promotions were with Howie in the Hills. Well, what happens to the product after that, after the 10 years? There's a lot of lack of clarity about when something that is an investment contract is no longer an investment contract. The courts help provide some of that with the secondary sales ruling in the Ripple case. And then throughout 2024, where more and more courts have come to the conclusion, I think even the SEC has now admitted in one of its filings in the Binance case that the crypto assets in and of themselves are not securities. So then you're dealing with something that is, not within the Securities Act, definitely a security. It's all the promises, promotions, and attributions that you have to look at. And one would argue you have to look at it a case by case basis, a transaction by transaction basis. And there's a lot of sort of downstream effects with that as well. The custody and clearing becomes much more complicated because, for instance, the FINRA rules for an SPBD, special purpose broker dealer, which is registered under FINRA rules, doesn't allow the custody and clearing of non-securities by an SPBD. So if something transitions from an investment contract, which is a security, to no longer an investment contract, are you then custodying a non-security all of a sudden? There's a lot of issues that um, I think have sort of been a waterfall or a cascading effect of some of the rulings by the courts, which have really helped make clear that there is some lack of clarity as to what these products are. We believe they're all commodities. We believe that everything that on our platform has gone through a close review process, and there are reasons why legally that they are commodities. We do list some 15 tokens on our derivatives exchange right now, so that's more than anyone else. We are seeing other market participants copy some of those products. I use the term copy list that also list those products on a derivatives exchange. But I think there has been a significant movement from the courts, the various court rulings, that many of these products don't fit within the investment contract rubric. And if they don't fit within that rubric, then they're not a security under that definition. What you do after that is still remains to be seen.
Right. And recently, obviously, the SEC made comments on the pathways to registration for crypto products. Do you feel that you all have been left with enough clarity in terms of those rulings?
Yeah, I will leave it to the public statements of many others who are out there from some of these other industries that I do know that Coinbase has been very vocal about that they have tried and tried to do the registration path. Um, and they have, as of yet, not succeeded. And I think that that's probably going to fundamentally change with the new administration coming in, though the new structure of having a very vowed pro crypto presidency. But I'll just leave. I think the public record is replete with the comments of others that you know all the steps that they've taken, all the attempts that they've done, all the meetings that they had, only to be rejected. It's essentially a historical record now. It doesn't. These are very smart people, very capable people that have tried and tried, and that door seems to remain closed at this time.
Right. But like you said, history will show that over time there have been many and many different attempts and things that have either been passed or not passed that leave a story.
Yeah. Now, the caveat to that is that there are at least two entities that I know that have registered as SPBDs. Um, but I think that story is yet unwritten. I don't really know much about their business model and what they're trading. But again, you're getting into that issue of FINRA rules don't allow you to custody a non-security. How do you make that determination? And what do you do over time as these products, even if an ICO now, which I think most people would say is a capital raising function, came out tomorrow and you were to trade that, somebody registered with the SEC, you went down that pathway, ultimately these products will convert over time to being non-securities,
Right.
unless the specific intention is to always keep it as a capital raising function. Um, and look, there are all kinds of nuances there that I'm not getting into, but even that presents itself a problem with the current registration methodologies.
How do you see the relationship between regulatory bodies and the crypto industry evolving over the next few years with this new administration coming?
Yeah, it's taken a fundamental shift. And there have been a lot of conversations where they are very pro crypto. But I put this as part of a sort of global movement. Obviously, Europe has already engaged in laws and rulemaking for MiCA. We see a fully um, available pathway in the Middle East for the provisioning of digital assets and the sale and essentially the merging with some traditional finance roles such as payment, credit cards, banking. We have announced a big partnership in that area. So I see it as a global movement towards the inclusion of cryptocurrency as just another asset class, but an asset class with some very specific use cases that fulfill gaps and are essentially very innovative in terms of the financial products that our customers will want in the near term and as the company continues to grow.
And you had mentioned, on the international side of things, how are you able to stay sort of agile and continuously evolving when dealing with the different countries that you're in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have an amazing team globally who is very engaged with their local regulators. We have sought to get the licenses. I mean, you can look through again our roadmap and some of the recent announcements, but we maintain licenses all over Europe: Greece, Italy, France. The Netherlands, I'm just rattling off a few. I don't want to omit a number of others, but just you look at the licenses that we have obtained globally, the registrations that we have obtained globally. You do that through hard work. You do that through interfacing with the regulators. You do that through going through the application processes. We're dedicated to that. We think it's an important milestone for our customers, and we want to continue to do that.
The various ways different countries utilize cryptocurrency, countries that might not have the opportunity to have the dollar there, and it allows a freedom that they just never would ever have.
We talked a little earlier about the U.S. military and a use case. I wanted to actually point out one other use case globally. I do believe that especially stable coins help fight global inflation and especially global hyperinflation. Um, and what that means is global hyperinflation often leads to national immigration issues. So stable coins are a way where in many countries around the world, they don't allow you to own US dollars on greenbacks. But if you have stable coins, it's a way of fighting your local hyperinflation so that if somebody has $1,000 in a bank account and has, 80% inflation or, in the hundreds of a percent, a percentage of hyperinflation in their own country. And there are public articles about this. Having that money in a stable coin allows you to basically still have that $1,000 at the end of the year, whereas in your local currency, its value is much less.
Right.
That allows people to stay in their own countries. And if people want to stay in their own countries, we should be looking at that private solution for assisting them rather than relying on the government to have to deal with that issue when they show up at our northern and southern borders.
Right.
Because look, when they have no money, and the hyperinflation in their country, invariably a certain percentage of those people are going to show up looking for a better life here in America. If we can help them stay in their own country,
Yeah.
we should be doing that.
Absolutely. I think, obviously living in a time where technology is offering that ability to give families who are truly struggling to have the opportunity to have a untouchable currency is, I think that's huge. And I think perhaps if the world knew a little more about cryptocurrency, then even though we're waking up, I think if people, the average person walking around, they understood a little more of what are the potentials and what can they do with it. it'll eventually lead to a lot more than I think what we're even imagining now.
Yeah, I think we're just scratching the surface on all the use cases. I mean, these are two very important ones, but just as the when the internet came out, there were all kinds of use cases now 20, 30 years later that were not envisioned then. Imagine the possibilities. We're at the dawn of a new age with crypto.
What is your vision for the future of crypto.com, and how do you see your role continuing to evolve within this journey?
That's a really great question. I will actually point people to a lot of the public statements by crypto.com over the last months, and really over the last week. Our CEO rolled out a roadmap, which talks about all the financial innovation that we're doing, that talks about the products we want to roll out, that talks about a unified fintech and innovation company in the financial space. We want to grow. We want to service our customers. I think a lot of people would say, "Oh, are you, spiking the ball right now?" We don't want to do that. We have spent the last year in quiet, building in the background, purchasing assets that we need to build on our platforms. And when the time is right, we'll let the customers spike the ball because they'll be happy with our financial products. They'll be happy with the services that we provide. Hopefully, globally, in a fully licensed and registered manner, uh, with the best way of adding value to our customers through our rewards program, through our credit card program. And I encourage your listeners to go to our roadmap. It's laid out better there than I could try and talk you through.
What advice would you give to legal professionals entering the crypto industry, and especially given how complex the regulatory landscape is?
I have found some of the industry conferences to be amazing opportunities to meet and learn and grow. Even, myself in sort of an established practice, an old veteran, if you will, of the legal wars. So for those young attorneys that want to do it, read up on the material. I'll put a personal plug in for the Crypto Legal Handbook, which was written by one of the other lawyers I work with all the time, Justin Wales. An amazing sort of primer on all of this. But I would also encourage you, show up. Go to these meetings and conferences. There are many in the DC area that are free, especially for the crypto industry. Learn, talk to people, network. I find that to be a very important part of the growth of crypto. Um, it's a smaller group of people right now that are still in the space, and it's an amazing opportunity to learn from some of the thought leaders, both in the industry as well as in the more narrow aspects of the legal aspects of cryptocurrency. So that's what I would encourage them to do.
It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show to talk about these different topics that everyone is thinking about. And while it might be top of mind for some folks, and maybe not for others at the moment, obviously crypto is continuing to grow and thrive. And to get your perspective is a true pleasure.
It's been fun having a conversation with you. Thank you.